break, we just talked a part one that you saw on episode 345. This is episode 347 because you will have heard our month in review last week. So we are continuing a conversation. If you haven't heard this episode, part one of 345, then you need to go back and listen to it because Dr. John King is hanging out with us still again. And he very powerfully, very courageously shared a lot of his own deep personal experiences in that previous episode that you need to circle back and catch before we talk about today the recovery. We're talking about what do we do? How do we handle this? So this is male sexual abuse and sex trafficking, PTSD and recovery, part two. And we opened up with this starting at age 4 for you, John, and really up until the age of 40 something, kind of trapped by the perils of this.
Yeah.
uh, I'll give a little bit more introduction here in a little bit, but um, tell us about the daffodils again, man, because I think that's what started out the recovery thing for you, and I think that's a powerful way to kind of start what it is that we're talking about today with recovery.
So for growing up as a child, I was abused and trafficked, what we call trafficked today. And, you know, my home life was just not very nice. There was lots of pornography, lots of abuse, lots of things going on, parties and all that sort of stuff. And, when the days were dark and nights long, I'd walk to school. And there was a lady down the road who had some daffodils growing in a front garden. And I ticked my years off with the spring times. And every time I saw the daffodils come up, I'd think to myself, you've survived one more year, you're doing good. And in '08, I had recall on the morning I saw daffodils. It was spring, the daffodils came up, and my mind just vomited all these recollections of things that were done to me, not by me, and everything came flooding back. And so that was the end of, I call my internal marketing department calls it John Ageddon. And it was literally that split that happens with complex post traumatic stress. Neurologically, your brain function changes. And I went from being John 1.0, who was very analytical, a very left brain, very goal driven, to right brain, very creative, very artistic. All I wanted to do was write poetry and smoke cigars. And even my skill set changed. Like John had the ability to run computer code, run Excel spreadsheets, run gap timetables. John 2.0 literally couldn't do those things anymore. And so it was having to come to understand who this man was, what he was capable of, and now even what he liked. And John 2.0 realized that he didn't know what he liked. He only ever knew what he didn't like and what he'd been made to do. So it was having to get to know an entire different person. And it's been a tremendous journey. It's been a long journey. It's been a journey with challenges, but it's a very fulfilling journey because I never liked John 1.0. John 1.0 didn't like himself. John 2.0 is really quite comfortable with himself.
And John 3.0.
John 3.0 was, I think, probably 2 years ago, I'd say, I finally felt I had my feet under me after 14 years, I'd
Yeah.
say, of this recovery process. And, and, and it was time for something different. And that's part of the phase we're in the last 12 months is taking on, and I mentioned in our first series, I took 15 years and about $300,000 and put myself through my own recovery process. And we started something called the Phoenix Collective just last year. And I've taken all that teaching and condensed it down into probably an 18-month or 2 year self paced teaching course. And the idea is, I thought no one should have to go through what I went through in terms of trying to learn this stuff. And there really isn't many resources for men. And there's not a lot of resources in some way for women with the way that we've done it. And every day is small video and an exercise, and then a week to reflect. And it's a self based taught. Because if you're like me, you'll consume that knowledge in 3 months. You'll just consume everything. But
Hmm.
then you'll need to come back to it, and then to come back to it, and then to come back to it.
Over and over again.
Information, revelation, application, transformation.
Yeah.
And when only you gather, I gathered these 200 books, but 3 years in, I realized that I hadn't changed the way I would thought. I thought I would or I should. And that was because I'd gathered information, but I hadn't made it mine and I hadn't applied it and I hadn't seen the transformation. So for the next 10 years or 11 years, I started to apply the truths that were mine and I started to see this incremental change, which is something I'd love us to unpack about how we overestimate what we can do in 12 months and underestimate what God can do in 10 years. And I think that's a major problem with recovery is we're so sick and tired of being us. We just want to stop being us, but it takes a long time.
Incremental change. Yes, I want to say, you know what? You're hearing Dr. John King talk in a courageous way about what his experiences are. But off the get go front end here on this particular episode, part two, I want you to understand you too can be courageous, but that does looks like what that looks like is different. It's not coming on an international podcast and talking about your story, guys. It is not that. It is simply taking the courageous first step back to kind of share with somebody something little itty bitty piece of what your story is, just to take the step out of the darkness into a light with someone that you can trust. And there are people that you
Yeah,
can trust
absolutely.
in your
Yeah,
circle.
but very good, Chris. Very good.
So this is through a therapist's eyes, where you get insights and information from a panel of therapists. Usually, we have none other than Mr. John King and myself. Neil come out of the curtains a little bit today, but this is not the delivery of therapy services in any way. We ask you to click, subscribe, do all those kind of fun things, man. We disseminate information and blow up stereotypes and myths about mental health and substance abuse. That's our job. Your part is to click, really tell a friend, subscribe to YouTube. We need your help to kind of help other people. So Apple Podcast, Spotify, all the different places that you get your podcasts. Give us the 5 stars, all that kind of stuff. We're at contact at throughatherapisteyes.com. Listen, when we're the panel, Victoria, John, Casey, and I, we're licensed clinical therapists doing real clinical work every day. And this is where we talk honestly and openly about what actually helps, because we see this happening in our offices, right? So, John, I invite you. I appreciate you being here, man. This is the human emotional experience which we do endeavor to figure out together.
Yeah, it's good, brother.
All right. So real quick, we covered this in part one, but I want to kind of give it justice with what this guy has done, man. He has done so much. He's got a documentary, A Light in the Darkness. He's got a documentary, Stopping Traffic. He's an Australian-born indigenous Warumungu author, speaker, and survivor advocate based in Texas. I said Warumungu correctly this time, I think. Did I, sir?
It's all good, mate. You don't. It's a
Yeah.
phonetic language. You can just butcher it all you want. No black fellas, no black fellas going to worry too much about it, mate.
Fair enough, and I love your accent, man. I gotta say, I could just listen to you talk all day. He
Yeah,
founded Give Them
likewise,
a
mate.
Voice Foundation to champion male survivors of childhood sexual abuse and combat human trafficking. Give Them a Voice Foundation. He translates hard won recovery that he is sharing today into practical, brotherhood driven frameworks that help men especially, rebuild discipline, purpose, and relationship. He's been featured in Stopping Traffic, Light in the Darkness. Please find those on Amazon Prime. Uh, and across podcast stages. He's helping law enforcement, veterans, and community leaders. And we're going to start out with that a little bit more today. He's doing some memoir work. He's writing some fictional books that is based on his real life. This is somebody, dude. This is a dude you want to look up. This is a dude you want to listen to. I can tell you that for sure. And then lastly, he's building currently the Phoenix Collective. John, you know, in part one, before we turn the mics on, you were really laying some knowledge down, and I'm gonna take that for the rest of my career, man. Honestly, because what you were talking about was surprising to me. I had not heard this. You know, I feel a certain privilege, a certain honor. It's just so humbling to work with our men and women in the military, especially, and being a Navy dad. My son's serving us in Yokosuka, Japan, on base there as a religious program specialist. Proud of you. Shout out, Adam. But our first responders, the guys that drive the ambulance trucks, don't get thought of a lot. But the men and women that serve us in policing, especially firefighters, all of that, man, you were talking some crazy knowledge about these folks, and I'm going to be aware of that now. I'm going to move forward kind of with a new level of awareness about what kind of childhoods they may have had. Share that what we was talking about.
It started with, I developed some relationships with guys when we were involved in some anti-trafficking work, and some of the hardest men are the nicest men. Big goofy guys, and
Sure.
uh, and they've done a lot of wet work. The guy that really brought it home for me was a black ops guy, NSA, CIA. Uh, did a lot of stuff overseas, a lot of very dark stuff, very very important stuff for our nation. And he read some of my poetry early on, and he he locked himself in his attic reading his book, sobbing for 3 days. His wife rang me out of the blue, saying, "What the hell have you done to my husband? Who the hell are you?" And it's like,
Hmm.
I'm just a guy, man. Like, I live about an hour and a half away from you. So he ended up coming up, and we hung out and out, and he said, "Look, what I did overseas never worried me." He said, "What worried me is what happened to me as a kid, and the fact that my baseball coach, who was also the mayor of a small town in Texas, every
Hmm.
Saturday would sexually abuse me."
Hmm.
And because he was the mayor and the police chief at the time, they were running this little what we would call a pedophile ring now, and drove the family out of town because the dad confronted these guys and they called him a liar, ruined his ability to do business and everything else. And he went into the military because you'd never mess with me and mine again. You messed with me as a child, and I didn't protect myself. I was too weak of a man as a child because I should have been able to protect myself as an 11-year-old boy. He's taken his 50-year-old perspective and looking back and said, I should have been tougher.
Hmm.
And he could never reconcile that. And the challenge he was facing is in the VA. He couldn't talk. He had PTSD,
Right.
but nothing that happened to him overseas resulted in PTSD. Everything that resulted in it was based on childhood. So here he is trying to get help, couldn't talk about it because it was a pre existing condition. And he would
Hmm.
have lost his benefits, his insurances, and everything else because he had PTSD. So he was unable to get help because there was no one that he could talk to about it.
That is
So it
so
started a
wrong.
journey for the
Getting
last,
angry, man.
oh, I know, man. And it started a journey for me of about 10 years. And particularly the tip of the spear guys, our forefronters, conversationally, I'd say probably 60%, 70% of those have had very adverse childhood experiences. The stats run that somewhere between 20 to 85% of veterans report childhood trauma extreme. And if you look at police officers, 13.7% of those score, and there's a scale, if people don't know the Advanced Childhood Experience Scale, the average person or the average percentage is 1.6 people. Amongst police officers, it's 4 plus. Instead of a 1.6 score, it's a 4 plus score on that scale. And the childhood trauma actually drives their PTSD. And what we don't think we realize with our police officers is our veterans go on deployment and then they come back. Whereas a police officer gets out of bed, puts his boots on, and goes out every single day. And
Never
there is
stop.
no pause, there
Never
is no
stop.
stop for it. And for firefighters, it's somewhere between 28 and 38% have had the problem. EMTs, it's about the same thing, about 38, 39% have got adverse childhood experience.
I mean, I
So you've
just
got,
want to pause. Like those numbers are crazy.
yeah.
I did not know that.
Paramedic training, kids being trained as paramedics, 16% of them exhibit um, PTSD within the first 3 to 5 months of training based upon pre existing abuse situations.
Yeah.
So
And
if
and we
we,
were oh, go ahead. Yeah.
no, go on.
Well, and we were talking. I'm curious if you've kind of dove in. I mean, my clinical brain just kind of runs down a rabbit hole with that as far as what's happening there and kind of what's happening for those men and women as well, women in first response. Actually, that's a question. How does that relate to women in first response? Is that you're focused on men there or no?
It's this those stats are gender free, and I like to deal
Okay,
with gender free stats. Like I like
gotcha.
I like to deal with this as a human issue, not a gender issue.
Yeah,
Because if you look at it statistically, there's more male cops than there are female cops. Military, they'll talk about very high percentage wise of women, but because there's less women, therefore the percentages are higher. But the sheer numbers, there's about a, there's about a 10% difference between men and women, just in sheer numbers, in veterans that have experienced military sexual trauma. In fact, in the VA, 40% of everyone who responds and reports are male. And that's there's a massive percentage on top of that of undisclosed reporting. So we've got some major issues across both of those: trauma that's happening within our military and behavior that's happening within our law enforcement as a result of some of these things.
Yeah, and that's what I started to go into. I mean, you said that I was a small boy and I couldn't protect myself at that time. And by golly, you're not going to hurt me anymore. And so, we get into the military or policing or things like that. And I'm also wondering about just the sort of the allure. I'll point out, by the way, our boys got the cigar on the YouTube live. You need to check us out on the video, and I would join you, brother, if I wasn't in my living room, man. My taste buds have been dripping there watching you. But there's a draw, right? There's an excitement, a dopamine release. There's a powerful experience that people have where you're kind of drawn to chaos or you're at home in the chaos.
Yeah.
There's a certain familiarity, a calm under pressure. It's all of those things that we've talked about in first responding, but I never really linked that as much as you're linking it to specifically abusive situations in their childhood.
Yeah, the ability to be calm often comes because you've experienced extreme trauma,
Yeah.
and here you are in a situation where everyone else is falling apart, and you're going, "I don't know what the big deal is, man. It's just a fire."
Yeah.
And it kicks in all that fight and flight, but it kicks in all that risky behavior. So if you think of the fact that because of childhood adversity, you already got elements of PTSD, and you love risky behavior.
Mm,
So therefore, being able to run into a situation, a live fire, or a fire situation, or a riot situation, you're already on your front foot. You live your life in red going to black, and you're just on,
yeah. Engaged.
and you're engaged. And a lot of the guys, I think they harden up because they become hard men because they believe they were soft children, instead of giving themselves the grace to understand they were just children, and someone did
Well,
something to
there's
them and
another
said,
thing too, though. I want to jump on that because there's also like the natural psychological system, John, that kicks in hard because you're surviving,
yeah,
and your human psychology did exactly what it needed to do to get through and
yeah,
thrive. It's amazing, right? Even to the point of repression, where boop, it didn't even happen. You don't even recall it. And I know you had those experiences where later on with the daffodils it flooded back, but this is survival, man. People will survive when they need to, and whatever their psychology needs to do to push them into survival and
absolutely,
management,
absolutely,
right? So
yeah,
there's
that's
some
true.
things on the front end in talking about recovery I want to hit. Like, there's a lot of myths, and I think this is true around the world. I'm more familiar, obviously, with Western culture in America here, but men can't be victims. Boys are supposed to be tough.
Yeah,
The
all of that.
experiences that I had created arousal, therefore, it isn't abuse.
Yeah,
The shame, the identity confusion, the fear of not being believed,
yeah,
suppression
yeah,
of all of the symptoms.
yeah,
People do not report that this happened to them. I
yeah,
can't tell you how many times, John, I've had people in therapy as we've come across these types of issues are actually wondering if they're gay or not. Their
yeah,
identity gets raped, really. Male
yeah.
sexual abuse is deeply under acknowledged and under treated. Fair?
Absolutely fair. I think most people who admit or realize that that could very well be a strong possibility. Statistically, it's just a fact. You talk to any law enforcement on the ground, and they'll tell you that the likelihood, and even when it gets into spousal abuse and domestic violence, like England last year or the year before, their domestic violence reporting stated that 45% of women were initial perpetrators of domestic violence, and that leaves a large percentage of those things. In within lesbian relationships, I think the rate of domestic violence in those is like 85%.
Mhm.
So we've got a range of things that we're not addressing or understanding, or we want to put them in these little political pockets instead
Mhm.
of, again, okay, let's just have a conversation about the state of humanity, and what do we need to do to improve where we live and why we live and how we live.
Well, there's just a lot there. I'm just gonna say that's about 5 more shows, to say the least. Because you're right, man. It's just first. I think the thing that I hear loudest there is, let's get the real dialogue going.
Yeah, and don't interpret anything everything I've said is judgment free. Like I don't care who you love, and I don't care how you love. I I, I just want to see human beings get whole, and it's not a gender thing. It's not a lifestyle choice. Just it's just get whole, so violence isn't a part of your life, so that fear isn't a part of your life, so judgment and lack of grace towards yourself isn't part of your life, and they're
Shame
the
and
sorts
guilt.
of things. Yeah, and like you, mate, like as a therapist, that's what you want to do. You want to see the quality of a human being's life improve,
Absolutely,
on an ongoing basis.
absolutely. What do you do when this stuff is popping? What do you do when you begin to realize what I've experienced was wrong? What do you do when maybe an uncomfortable truth tickles into your brain? Or what do you do when you begin to get a little confused that, like, as you said in part one, I can't stand the thought of my beautiful baby child being naked. It's doesn't make sense to you. You're confused. You're in a shameful spot. You feel alone. What do you do to enter into recovery?
Ah, okay. Great question. Because there is no short answer. Because recovery is messy. Recovery is one thing. Recovery is linear. It's just not a linear process. It's just one thing I came to understand. I was getting my private pilot's license, and I set off with my instructor, and we are supposed to head due um, due west at 90, and he said, "I want you to dial it in 88," and we took off. And when we got to where we were supposed to be, we were hundreds of miles off. And he said, 1 or 2 degrees off, you're
Yeah.
off.
Oh, yeah.
And in my own life, what I looked at, and I mentioned this last time, is we overestimate what we can do in 12 months and underestimate what I believe the Creator can do in our lives in 10 years. And in America, we've got a habit of popcorn 30 seconds. That's all the way we cook, microwave, ding, we want this thing
Mhm.
now. And what I was looking at, and why I felt such a failure 3 or 4 years into this, is I still didn't like myself, and I still hadn't recovered. I still couldn't live with myself. I was having a challenge every day. Everything, it was very, very difficult. And so I thought to myself, okay, I've got to set myself reasonable goals. I started to break it down. And I thought, okay, I will try. I realized I was trying to change just 1%, 1% a day. I can do that. Well, you can't. That's 365% change, or 360 whatever it is percent change. Well, that's not realistic. Okay. Okay. Well, what if I change 1% a week? Then in 2 years I'd be totally recovered. Nah, it's not going to work. So what I did was literally, disappointment comes from unmet expectations. I lowered my expectations, and I set myself a goal of 1% a month. And I realized that
Wow.
in about 8 years, I would be changed. I could believe that, and so I would just take on one thing. And for your people out there, mate, that are listening, pick one thing this month, and for the next 30 days, if it's going to the gym, if it's drinking water, if it's spending 5 minutes outside in the sun every day, if it's going to bed at the same time, getting up at the same time, just pick one thing, do it, and have a win. Have a win in your recovery, because you don't like yourself, you don't like how you behave, and you're beating yourself up every day because you're not able to manage this, and you feel stuck. You can do 1%. And just understand, you got to stay around for the next 10 years, and the life you'll get is phenomenal, but it's just going to take 1% a month, and you'll get there.
I love that, because, Alcoholics Anonymous talk about the KISS method, keep it simple. The second S is stupid. Keep it simple, stupid. The one step at a time kind of mantra that we talk about, baby steps. It drives me nuts as a therapist, John, when people say, "Oh, I'm just trying to take baby steps," but that's totally what people can identify with, and those are those are powerful realities that you just said. Just choose one thing that you can take the next best step for your life, and that's literally what starts this beautiful recovery
Yeah.
process. Literally, that very first thing.
Yeah.
Um, some
And
of the
it's a,
things, yeah. Go ahead.
no, go on.
Well, I was just going to say some of the things that healing includes is naming what happened accurately to yourself, reducing shame,
Yeah.
doing a therapy or reaching out to someone that's trusted. Maybe it's a priest, maybe it's just your next door neighbor. I don't care who it is. We
Yeah.
started the show off with that, reaching out, but rebuilding safety beliefs, safety statements, learning some tools of emotional language, and you know dealing with the relational intricacies with your family who may not know this even happened. One of the things as a young clinician I remember that really made a big impression on me, John, was a an Oprah Winfrey show. Now I like sports, right? I love football and different sports, and I forget the player that was there, but it was a New York Jets receiver, and Oprah was interviewing him, and they're doing what we've done today. I mean, they were doing the courageous thing of naming this and talking about this. I mean, it's a national show, right? They're like on national TV, NBC, right? And she's talking to him, and you know how Oprah, man, she just asks these probing questions and gets at the stuff, and she's like, "Well, I'm curious, like when when you when you began to talk about this, like." Um, how did your family respond to this? How did your mom, take this? And he looked at her. He's like, "Well, um, yeah, we I've never talked to her about this before." and, and Oprah's like, taken back, like, "Wait, what? You mean like your mom, who's in the audience right over there, row three, wave for us there? Y'all have never even talked about this before?" And he's like, "Yeah, no, never have." That's the power of the gripping reality, particularly when you got some skin in the game, your wife or your family, your mom, your brother, your friends. A lot of times these are things that they have no idea happened to you, right?
Yeah. Exactly. And I think that's a starting point. I think trying to define a starting point for therapy is very difficult. I I think people come to therapists at some point in a recovery process, but very rarely at the front end.
Yeah, oh yeah,
It's
agreed.
all there's some point of crisis. I remember when I went to see my therapist. I had a church at the time, and life had totally imploded when I was doing a bodybuilding competition up in South Dakota. And I decided I had come as far as I had come with the knowledge I had, and I needed to get to the next step. So, there's 6 or 7 years here of me going after it, and I realized I'd learned as much as I could. I couldn't do it by myself anymore. And I think for all of us, there comes that stage where we've got to be willing to admit that. And I went to see it. She was a wonderful lady. She was a friend. She was a mother-in-law of a friend, similar background, South Dakota. I was pretty sure she was Satan incarnate, and she looked like everybody's typical
Satan
grandmother.
incarnate up there
Oh
in
yeah,
the
she
cold,
was.
brother.
She's a
It's cold up
therapist,
there
mate.
in Dakota.
She was a therapist. She had to be Satan incarnate. I was going to tell her all my life. Ah, screw you, love. And I remember pulling into a car park and getting my car stuck in the snowdrift, trying to escape. And she came out and knocked on my window. I said, "Hi, are you John?" I said, "Satan, Satan." Yes, I'm John. I'm John. So I went in there, and I remember sitting down there with her, and I remember the moment I made the decision I was going to be honest, because I'd never shared my story.
Mm,
And I'm very good at being manipulative and a liar. Authenticity was very difficult for me. Now it's a cornerstone of my life because I grew up lying to save myself. So I can put on whatever front I need and appease whoever I need. It's survival skills. It's survival level lying. And I remember making a decision. Okay, I will tell one person once, and it's going to be this therapist.
mm.
So let's go. And we're 45 minutes in, and 30 minutes in, and she cancels the next appointment. We're another 45 minutes, an hour in, and she cancels the next appointment.
Mm.
We're another hour in, and she cancels the entire day.
Wow.
And so she had a big jar of yellow M&Ms with peanuts in it. And I ate the whole thing. I'm sitting there just popping these things, telling this
Oh
story.
my goodness.
My hand is stuck down in there as I come to my last thing, and I'm done, and she looked at me. I'm sure you've never done this. She looked at me and said, "This is the worst story I've ever heard. Um, I can't possibly help you. Um, I'm sorry." And she's sobbing at this point. She's sobbing, crying. I can't help you. And I
Oh
and I
boy.
and I remember looking at her going, "Okay, all right, but I'm just going to tell you this. I chose you, and I'm trusting you, and I will never speak to another human being about this stuff again." So I'm not manipulating you. I'm just going to tell you this fact. As a man, I've done the most vulnerable thing I could ever possibly do, is trust you with my history, my past, my secrets. And she said, "Okay." So therapists have therapists. You all do, and which is phenomenal. And so she rang her therapist and said, "Look, I got this guy. He's in town for 6 weeks and he wants to see me. What do you think I should do?" And so I went in and saw her the next day. She said, "I'm going to do this. And what we'll do is we'll meet once every 2 weeks for 6 months." I said, "No." I know. I said, "No. What we'll do is we'll meet twice a day um, for 5 days a week. And
Man, you
I'll
were
get this
ready to
done."
go.
I was on, man. She said, "That's impossible. You'll never process." And I said, "You do not know what I'm capable of. So don't tell me I can't do this." So we negotiated out for
Wow.
2 days, 3 times a week for a 6 week period. Brother, I would get up. It was freezing cold in South Dakota. I would get up and stand on the cardio machine, and the glass window, the entire like main street went down here. I am sobbing and bawling. My beard was full of frozen snot and
Oh
tears.
my God.
The guy who ran the gym, he asked me to no longer use the cardio machine upstairs in the public, but I could go down in the basement and have a cry. And I'd go from there, I'd go up and see my therapist, go and work out again, and I'd do this 3 times a week for 6 weeks. And what convinced her to take me on was I said, "I need you to fill my toolbox." And people who they need to go back
Right.
and listen to the previous one said,
Right.
"I don't need you to heal me. I need you to fill my toolbox." So at some time in the future, I've got these tools that I can pull out and use. I said, "I don't need you to save me. I need you to equip me because this is my responsibility."
I gotta jump in a little bit and say to you who's listening, okay, your recovery process doesn't quite have to go like that. That's
Don't do that.
intense, man.
Don't do that. That's crazy man talk. That is not how you do this thing, man. I'm telling you. I got issues.
What's funny is a lot of times to give you a contrast here, John. What I will experience with people in my office is a relationship that I've already had built in. We got trust, we got rapport, and they make that same decision, right? But it looks very different for them. What
Yeah.
they'll do is they're literally like done with the hour session. I don't know, whatever we're talking about, depression or they're presenting problem that came in for maybe marital challenge or whatever, whatever, and whatever. But they're literally standing up. We're doing our goodbye
Yeah.
greeting.
Yeah.
They're walking towards the door. You know where I'm going, right?
And
And they
by the
drop the
way,
bomb. They're like, "Well, also, when I was 5, my cousin did some things to me sexually." Boom, and they walk out the door. And
yeah.
that's it.
Okay. Okay. All right. Let's get that on the schedule again for next week, shall we? We'll start there.
Right.
Exactly.
Exactly. What a contrast. So we want to get back and revisit because all right, so you had an intense thing, and sometimes you do that with programs. You might be in a hospital setting, or you get some intensity on the front end and whatever. But we wanted to circle back around to incremental change.
Yeah.
Okay, and you're really on point to point out people feel like I've done a one and done, or do it. I'll just go see this therapist once, or go to a confessional booth with your pastor or your priest or whatever, and that's fine. Okay, listen, that's great, and you can never talk about it again. Okay, but you might try again, a second revelation, and then a third. And so when you get going on your own time, on your own pace, part one, I talked about trauma rules in therapy that I use. So and you do need to realize that you will retouch these things. So you recover, you heal, you move forward. Maybe a year later, you retouch, you re-engage, and then you stop and you take a break. And I think our life is kind of like that, right?
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about what did you mean by incremental change?
Um, Food coloring. I had an incident. I was speaking in a church, had a beautiful day, wonderful day. Flew in, room service was shut down, and so I picked up a Snicker bars, some Cheetos, and a Diet Coke, whatever. Went to my room, and I went from being very happy in 20 minutes to being suicidal, looking over a balcony. And I had this epiphany. It's like, what happened? What happened in 20 minutes? And this was way back before whatever. And I broke it down to sugar, red food coloring, and orange food coloring. And when I did the research on the ties between anxiety and depression and sugar, and between, in particular, a red food coloring number 5, and its inducement of insecurity and fear, it's a thing.
Wow.
And so for me, the first one degree was the elimination of sugar. And then that led to another more research, another 6 to 12 months of research on diet, which brought me into a high protein, high fat, low carbohydrate diet that I've pretty been on. It's a bodybuilding diet. And I realized that when I was bodybuilding, I felt mentally 30 to 40% better than when I wasn't training for a competition. So I was like, okay, I've got to there was another 1% change. And then I started to do research on the ties in between sleep and cognitive recovery. There's another. In the midst of this, I tried CBD and weed. Didn't work for me because THC made me incredibly paranoid. I couldn't get on pharmaceuticals because anything with an opioid base would make me bring up nightmares and daymares. I'm constantly in this cycle. So I took all those out and I went for anti-inflammatories, natural, like curcumin, turmeric. Um, in the last couple of years, red light therapy, spending time in the sun, touching a tree. I'm a 240-pound, 62-year-old tree hugger. Touching the tree because the natural frequencies put my circadian rhythm, reset it for me, which helps me have sleep. I'd like to say cold plunge, but I don't like being cold. Wim Hof is like, screw that guy. I ain't doing
I
that
never
stuff.
do a cold plunge
Nah,
while I'm
forget
living,
him.
man.
I
That's
can't. I
scary.
can't even do a tempered shower. I'm a pussy. So, so these things became this program, which biohacking trauma is like this collection of these 1% changes that had the most profound impact on my life. Understanding for your folks, this is a 13 to 15-year process of collecting these little tools. And they've just got to be committed to giving themselves grace to do a journey. And they'll get there. Especially they'll get a head start with someone like yourself or the programs we run because we've already walked these miles with people before, and they will have a chance to stand on the shoulders of someone else and get better quicker because that's what, guys like you are in the business for.
Yeah, and I want to highlight the fact that this incremental reality that you just so powerfully went through, it's possible. Like it's such an overwhelming task. It feels like in the beginning of it, and earlier I think maybe it was this one or maybe it was part one. We were talking about like this is just one little thing that we want to do. We just want to take a step. We don't have to build Rome in a day,
No.
And I think honestly, that's just journey of life. It's take trauma and all this heavier stuff out of the mix, and we just want to get at with like you want to improve your life. Okay, it's just one thing at a time, one day at a time, one conversation at a time. That's real manageable. And a little bit ago, you were talking about every different time you do that, you have like a success, and it really can build just one to the next, and then incrementally, now you might pick up some speed. Now you start clipping,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And you do. Your 1% actually, they go from months to maybe every 2 weeks to maybe weekly, maybe daily. You get, I had a couple of things happen just in the last month or so with another diagnosis, and all of a sudden, it was the missing pieces to the puzzle on understanding why I behave the way I do and why some things are difficult. And we touched on this in the first session. Diagnosis is a tool. It's reasons, not excuses. I behave this way not because I'm a victim and I can't help it. I
Right.
behave this way and now I understand it. so I can get some tools and make some changes in my life to be able to manage those things better.
Absolutely. What do we do about it?
Yeah. And how do we do it? How do we walk this thing out? I, I'm a big person. I'm big on taking personal responsibility because it is your life and your recovery, and you are responsible for it. Your therapist isn't, and they honestly can't do it for you. If you won't put in the work, you will never get well. They can give you all the tools you want, all the advice, all the ideas, information, revelation, application, transformation. But if you don't go home and see that advice your therapist is giving you as yours, not just information, your revelation, and you don't spend your time applying it, you will not transform.
And again, it's possible, I mean, I think people get so overwhelmed in their own psyche and mind, and the thing that makes me so kind of angry is the blindness, the scales on people's eyes, if you will, not knowing. I mean, the story that you're describing is powerful, John, because I mean, you didn't really even start this recovery journey until you're, what'd you say, 45 years old?
Yeah,
So
45.
so I don't care if your sexual abuse occurred when you were 7 and you're 22 now and you're hearing the show, or it occurred to you when you were 14, and you're 72 years old today. That's okay, because wherever you're at, like, in your journey, wherever you're at in your process, your psychology system has probably already helped you.
Yes.
And now you're going to jump in and join with that psychology system that's naturally and innately a part of you.
Yeah.
Join in that and take different action steps at wherever you're at, starting today.
Tony, today one of the highlights of something, the stuff we do, like you, mate. It's you don't you don't accumulate awards. You accumulate these mental trophies and pictures of people you helped. And for me, it was a 72-year-old man who came on one of our online things that we do, and for the first time in his life ever, he was able to talk about what happened to him as a kid. And so that man at 72 started a journey towards a quality of life in the latter part of his years, um, that will far surpass anything that he's had before.
I think that's one of the most humbling things that
Oh,
I
mate.
do in my really my life, not my
Yeah.
career, is when I will ask somebody at some point, when we're dealing with this issue. So who else in the world, right, besides you and that person, and now me, like, who knows of this? And John, you know what they're telling me, when they respond like, yeah, just, you know, no one.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, what a humbling
Privilege, mate.
reality this is.
Oh,
Such an
yeah.
honor
It's humbling, very humbling work.
to walk with people.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm aware of time. I don't want to overshoot us. You know what? How can people find you, John? What are you doing with the Phoenix? What did I call it? The Phoenix Group, or
Phoenix
the
Collective.
yeah, the
Phoenix
Phoenix
Collective.
Collective? And how do people find you? What are you doing in recovery work? Where do they actually take some steps?
Probably my website's a great place, drjohnaking.com. And I'll send you some links. I'll make sure you got them. And we're
We got
running a
them.
series of, oh, great. We're running a series of online courses for free for people. And we we took this, 15 years, 300 grand worth, and we put it down in this 2-year program. And, if they've heard your podcast and they come and they get to one of our free events, it's $27 for life. It's ridiculously cheap. I hate subscriptions. Like everything's a bloody subscription nowadays,
Yeah,
and I hate that
yeah.
stuff. I want people to get this stuff and have it with them on their phone or on their website. They can watch a 5-minute video, go through a 10-minute exercise, and they're designed to be incremental. Like you can watch the whole thing if you want, but you're only going to cycle back through it every day. Just do one thing, just one thing. Love yourself enough for 15 minutes. Just value your own recovery enough to watch myself and my wife talk about this stuff and give you some thoughts and some homeworks. Just do that for you. And it's a supplement, it's a complement, it's not a replacement, too. There is nothing that beats sitting down face to face with a therapist or in a support group or with a mate. But what it will do is start to give you some language for your recovery and some tools for your recovery. And once you start to accumulate those over the time from your therapist, your support group, your priest, your pastor, then all of a sudden you've got these things that are available for you to use. and accept the fact that recovery, you don't ever get healed from this. What you do is learn to manage it very, very well, and life becomes exceptionally pleasant.
So we have a segment that we do normally in our show. It's called Practical Questions, where the panel kind of takes a turn to kind of speak directly to you, the listener. And I'm gonna take a moment and do that with a question, as though I'm your therapist talking to you. And I'm gonna ask you, do you carry shame? and and understanding, shame is a feeling that, there's something wrong with me, there's something wrong that I've done, there's something inherently bad. The shame feeling is something that's insidious that comes at you. So I'm asking you, like, do you carry that? By carry, we mean, are you living in a space where something just doesn't feel right about something that ultimately was never your fault? Right? So are you carrying this shame feeling that something happened to you, or you might not even remember it, but you got a sense of it, and understanding that it wasn't even your fault, but that feeling is something that you want to listen to. So do you carry shame, and do you realize that it wasn't your fault, and and can you listen to that feeling to trigger what John has talked about in his recovery? That's a practical question I offer to you, the listener, today. um, so we need to wrap it up. John, I listen, dude. I want to stay in touch with you and work
Yeah,
with you and track with you.
yeah,
I appreciate your courage, brother. I love your accent. Maybe I need to come to Dallas or wherever you're at and
yeah. You
check
do,
and have
mate.
a
God's
cigar with you.
country. Get down here. We'll have an argument about that. We'll go shoot some guns and smoke some cigars, mate. It'll be good.
I got my. I'll bring my nine, and I'll
Come
bring
on
my
down.
my little Patron. That's my brand. How would you summarize us up, man? What do you want to kind of say in summary here?
Oh, there's hope. There's hope. If I can recover, you can recover. You can do this. It's okay. It'll take some time, but you got this. You got this.
Neil, I'm not even going to try to compete this week, John. We do a shrink wrap up. I'm going to put him down as the victor. We just have fun. The panel of therapists. We kind of review the show. It's been an awesome journey.
Yeah, thank you.
Episode.
Thank you, fellas. Really appreciate the time and allowing me to hopefully bring some hope and light to your folks. Really appreciate
Absolutely.
it. Yeah.
Well, you are a hope and you are a light. I respect and admire the courage that you show. I'm getting to know you, and I can tell you're a pretty cool dude.
Cheers,
Um,
brother. Thank you.
Neil, any takeouts? What are we doing here? We got some links and stuff that we'll have out.
Got plenty of links there on the YouTube video right now. Well, you'll have them for your show notes when you post it. Yeah, just get you out there, John. We want people to hear this. This is an amazing story.
Well,
It's
thanks, fellas. And please collaborate with me on Instagram or the other platforms, and I'll share it or send me the footage and I'll break it into clips. Or if you've got clips, I'll put it. Got about 250,000 people on social platforms, and I'd love to highlight what you guys do and what your show do. I do a lot of these. I do 2 of these a week, and this is one of my highlights. This has been
fantastic.
exceptional.
Wow, I appreciate the kind words there, brother.
Yeah, you're
Absolutely,
good. You guys are good at what you do, and your content's
Mhm.
good. Your format's good. It's been a privilege. Thank you very much.
Really appreciate that. Listen, take care, guys. We will see you next week. Stay well.